As we hear today, the first day of December, we're going to be beginning a series, a bit of a Christmas series called Christmas Carols. And we will be talking about going through different songs that have been cherished for centuries. And we'll be talking about phrases in these songs, making the biblical connection, as well as how the implications for our lives. And the song we'll talk about today was written by a man named Isaac Watts. Isaac Watts was born in 1674, and he, from a young age, he had a bit of a talent for rhyme. Once when he was interrogated, when he was a child, he was interrogated for keeping his eyes open during prayer, which makes you ask, how did anyone know that, right? If you're following the rules, right? But his response to this interrogation was, "A little mouse, for want of stairs, ran up a rope to say its prayers." So he just kind of busts out this rhyme, as let's just say that his father was not too impressed with that response. And so his father began to discipline him the old-fashioned way. And in the middle of this discipline, Isaac Watts said, "Oh, Father, Father, pity take, and I will no more verses make." So there he is. So there he is in the middle of being disciplined, and he's just flowing, right? He's just busting rhymes. Had a bit of a knack for rhyme. Later, when he was a teenager, he complained that though he had no problem with the content in congregational singing, as his church would mostly sing the Psalms, he was fine with the content, but it felt that there was a lack of emotional connection, that there was just a lack of fervor in the whole thing. And so his father challenged him, well, okay, then, you start writing songs. And over time he did. So throughout his life, Isaac Watts wrote When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. He wrote Marching to Zion. He wrote Absent from Flesh. And he wrote, probably what he's most well known for is the song we'll talk about today. It was a reflection on Psalm chapter 98. Psalm 98 verse 4 says, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music. Make music to the Lord with the harp and the sound of singing. With trumpets and the blast of the ram's horn, shout for joy before the Lord, the King. Let the sea resound and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands and the mountains sing together for joy." That sounds like "And heaven and nature sing." The song we're talking about today is "Joy to the World." And interestingly, Isaac Watts penned this in 1719, but he didn't write it as a Christmas carol. In fact, he didn't even write it as a song. It was actually a poem as he reflected on Psalm 98. It wasn't set to music until 1836. So long after he died, it was set to the song that we know today. Another interesting thing about it is that some have observed that as you read the lyrics of "Joy to the World," it seems that Watts had in mind more, not so much the first coming of Jesus in the incarnation, but rather the second coming of Jesus, the future coming of Jesus. And yet, "Joy to the World" has stuck as a part of the Christmas season. It's firmly embedded in Christmas culture. And it begins with this kind of panoramic worldwide view of all of creation, but it kind of narrows down to something as small as the human heart. So it begins universal, narrows down to the individual by saying, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come, let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room." Let every heart prepare him room. And while this song is not a Christmas song, it's interesting how the birth narratives of Jesus does kind of have that prepare him room kind of theme to it, right? Luke chapter 2, we have Mary and Joseph traveling to Bethlehem as part of the Roman imperial census. Each man was to go to his ancestral home to be counted. So Mary and Joseph go to Bethlehem, where Joseph was born. And we find that a verse in Luke 2 was that Mary gave birth to a baby son and laid him in a manger, for there was no room in the inn. And in our imaginations, we picture the situation that there was no vacancy in the motels in Bethlehem. And so we've even created, for our Christmas pageants, this character of the cold-hearted innkeeper. But the innkeeper isn't mentioned in the scriptures. In fact, the situation may have more likely have been that this word inn is actually used elsewhere in the scriptures. And it's the word that Jesus uses when talking to his disciples about making preparations for the Passover, making preparations for the Last Supper. And it's better translated as guest room. There was no room in the guest room. So it's likely that Joseph went to Bethlehem to go stay with relatives. And in their guest room, there were other relatives there, and not quite room enough that would make a woman about to deliver a child comfortable, right? Too many people around to deliver and give birth. And so then we imagine, since there was no room in the guest room, they went to some freestanding stable, or in some traditions, perhaps a cave. But another possibility is that simply they just went downstairs to the lower level of the house where animals were often kept. So basically the basement, the lower level of the house. Either way we look at it, any way we look at it, although Israel was very much looking forward to and was anticipating, they liked the idea of the Messiah, they weren't prepared for Jesus. They weren't prepared for Jesus. And there's a word associated with the Christmas season. It's the word Advent. It's a Latin for arrival. And an extension of Advent, or another word, is Adventus. And Adventus was when a Roman emperor would come to a city. So it was this kind of ceremonial way to greet the Roman emperor. So there would be these festivals, this parade. A lot of preparations were made to greet the Roman emperor to the city. And so you can imagine being an outsider, being someone visiting the city, not really quite sure what's going on, but you see these people are making preparations for this big party. Everyone's sweeping their front porch, right? So you're curious and you're wondering, so what's going on? What is everyone preparing for? And they would answer, well, the emperor is coming. And the emperor is a big deal. I wonder if there was any outsider who would examine your life, would they conclude that anything is a big deal? And if so, what would that be? What would an outsider, as they observe your life and the preparations that you make and the things that you do, what would they conclude is the big deal of your life? Is it Jesus? Is it developing spiritual depth, spiritual growth? The question is, along with prepare him room, let every heart prepare him room, have you prepared him room? And you may say, well, of course, I'm here, aren't I? And yes, that's really good. We're so glad that you're here, and I hope that you're glad to be here as well. But I would argue that preparing him room is much more than showing up for an hour and a half on a Sunday. It's an important question to ask, or it's an important concept to think about, because our default, especially in the 21st century and in the West, is to have cluttered hearts. Is that right? We're so cluttered. We're so cluttered and distracted. Richard Foster wrote a book called The Celebration of Discipline. He wrote it back in 1978. It sold a couple million copies. It's a bit of a classic. And in 2018, the 40th anniversary, he wrote a new introduction for it. And in it, he says, our world has not changed all that much. There is one major difference that has occurred in the past 40 years that does indeed impinge upon our spiritual life. I can state it in one word: distraction. Distraction is the primary spiritual problem in contemporary culture. Frankly, when we are perpetually distracted, we are unable to discern the voice of the Lord. Oh, for the day when all we had to do was turn off the TV if we wanted solitude and silence. Now we click through an endless stream of internet links, read tweets from God knows who, check email constantly, text family and others, and mindlessly scroll through Facebook. Even more insidious are the ways we are bombarded by the broad distractions of constant noise, constant demands, constant news. Neuroscience studies are now showing us that the neural pathways of our brains are being rewired accordingly so that our physical capacity for sustained attention is decreasing. Later in the book, he says, in contemporary society, our adversary majors in three things: noise, hurry, and crowds. If he can keep us engaged in muchness and manyness, he will rest satisfied. Psychiatrist Carl Jung once remarked, hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil. Similarly, Corrie ten Boom says that if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Why is it that this is the tactic of our enemy? To keep us busy, to keep us in a hurry. Well, it's because God's goal is to form you to become like Jesus. And that takes time. But not only time, it takes intentionality. And it's not as though you are doing all the heavy lifting yourself. It is God forming Christ in you, but you do need to show up. A surgeon can help you if you have, say, blockages in the vessels around your heart, but you have to show up, right? You can't do that yourself, but you also have to show up for it. So the question is, God is present to you. Are you present to God? Similar to Foster, a priest named Ronald Rolheiser says that today the number of historical circumstances are blindly flowing together and accidentally conspiring to produce a climate in which it is difficult not just to think about God or to pray, but to simply have any interior depth whatsoever. We, for every kind of reason, good and bad, are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion. It is not that we have anything against God, depth and spirit. We would like this. It's just that we are habitually too preoccupied to have any of those show up on our radar screens. We are more busy than bad, more distracted than non-spiritual, and more interested in the movie theater, the sports stadium, and the shopping mall, and the fantasy life they produce than we are in the church. Pathological busyness, distraction, and restlessness are major blocks today within our spiritual lives. And this might sound like, just these kind of broad, sweeping blanket statements like, yeah, we're all distracted. But I wonder, as we read those, if you could identify with those, maybe within your own lives, within yourselves, or with others. We need to recognize it in ourselves first, but maybe you see it in others as well. But in case this feels too general, that these statements are too general, well, let's talk numbers, because this has been studied. In the early 2000s, a professor named Michael Zigarelli did a study that took 5 years. He surveyed 20,000 people, ages 15 to 88, in a number of different countries. And these were Christians. And what he found was that more than 60% of Christians say that the busyness of life just keeps them from developing their relationship with God, keeps them from developing any spiritual depth. The busyness of life and distractions keeps them from developing their relationship with God. 60%. That's more than most. So that is the hearts that are not preparing him room. And he broke this down into professions. He says that 72% of lawyers affirm this. 72% of lawyers say the busyness of life keeps them from developing spiritual depth, followed by 66% of nurses, people who are busy at the hospital a lot, followed by 65% of pastors. He says, it's tragic and ironic. The very people who could best help us escape the bondage of busyness are themselves in chains. Not only is there everyday busyness, the everyday busyness of work, dropping your kids off at school, taking your kids to soccer practice, going grocery shopping, doing laundry, doing dishes, running errands, going to doctor's appointments. Things are just busy. Our time just fills up quickly. But on top of that, there's Christmas busyness. There's Christmas busyness of work parties, church Christmas parties, family Christmas gatherings. There are school programs and school concerts. There's planning, budgeting, shopping. There's cooking, there's baking. There's stressing, there's eating. There's stress eating. Amen. Yeah. There's traffic. There's overstimulation, irritation. It's just a lot. And so when December 25th rolls around, you're sitting on a couch, you're ankle deep in wrapping paper, and there's eggnog stains on your shirt, and you're wondering, is that it? Is that it? It's all a blur. And just an observation, this has really not much to do with it, but is this true for anyone else? Is the day after Christmas, December 26th, is that like a weird day for anyone else? Like, I don't know what to do with myself, right? Is that true for anyone else? Maybe if it's not, maybe you have guidance from me, like, here's what you should do. I don't know. I never know what to do with myself on December 26th. There's busyness. There's Christmas busyness. The thing is, there's nothing inherently wrong with just being busy when it comes to just having things to do. But there's a difference between being busy and over busy, or a difference between being busy and being hurried. Being busy is external. That's just having things to do. We were made not only to rest with God, but to be productive. But there's being hurried, which is an inward posture. Being hurried, being so in a rush, being so frenetic that you have no space to connect with God at all. And it may be that you're not externally busy. You're kind of chilling on the outside. There's not much that you're doing. So you're kind of like the swan on the pond, Everything looks like it's going well, but what's going on underneath the surface? Those feet are flying, right? So it may be that you look relaxed on the outside, but your mind is just spinning. And you're so preoccupied, mostly with thoughts and anxieties of things that won't matter in 6 months. You keep yourself busy though, right? We're often busy. And in our busyness, we often find it difficult to connect with God. So what Zigarelli points out at the end of his study, he makes his conclusions that it may be the case that Christians are assimilating to a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload, which leads to 2, God becoming more marginalized in Christians' lives, which leads to 3, a deteriorating relationship with God, which leads to 4, Christians becoming even more vulnerable to adopting secular assumptions about how to live, which leads to 5, more conformity to a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload. And then the cycle begins again. So what can we do about this? What can we do about this busyness? What can we do about this distraction, this kind of like overload that we have? I want to make the suggestion that in this season, let it launch you into a regular rhythm of slowing down, noticing, and adoring. You slow down, you notice, and adore. Let me read a bit from a book, Liturgy of the Ordinary, written by Tish Harrison Warden. She has a knack for discovering the sacred among the mundane. And she's talking a bit about engaging with the good things of the world, of pleasure. And she's commenting on, C.S. Lewis's comment about, when we engage with pleasures, it's like tracing the sunbeams back to the sun. Because all these good gifts that we have in the world remind us of the good giver. As James says, every good and perfect gift comes from the Father of lights. And so she says that so much wars against these little moments of glory in our day. For me, anxiety and needling worries are always clanging in the background, robbing me of the ability to simply exhale. I have to learn to surrender, to give up my flimsy illusion of control and relax into beauty. As busy, practical, hurried, and distracted people, we develop habits of inattention and miss these tiny appearances of God in our day. But if we were fully alive and whole, no pleasure would be too ordinary or commonplace to stir up adoration. I have to learn the habits of adoration intentionally, to get out of my head and stop to notice the colors in my daughter's eyes or the sound of rain on our back porch. Part of me, the taskmaster general in my brain, can feel guilty about these moments when I slow down to enjoy the beauty around me. A warm cup of tea and an empty hour can feel frivolous and frittering. I feel guilty about not doing something more important with my time, like laundry or balancing the checkbook or meeting my neighbors or working or volunteering or serving the poor. Those are, of course, important things to do and good and necessary ways to use time. But it takes strength to enjoy the world. And we must exercise a kind of muscle to revel in delight. We must take up the practice, the privilege and responsibility of noticing, savoring, and reveling so that, to use Annie Dillard's phrase, creation need not play to an empty house. All that to say is that in this season of Christmas, let's remember that it's kind of hard to forget that we live in bodies. And this Christmas season is unapologetic in how it collides with our senses, isn't it? I mean, think about it. There are flickering lights and candles to see. There are sleigh bells and carols and sometimes the crunching of snow under your feet to hear. There's the smells of peppermint and pine. There's the taste of cinnamon rolls and hot chocolate. There's the warmth of slippers and perhaps a fireplace. All of these things are what we experience in our bodies and through our senses. And those, again, are the sunbeams that rightly experienced we can trace back to the sun. In other words, as we go through life and experience life in our bodies, take time to pause and remember where those good things came from. And that way we can give not only thanks, but adoration. What a good God who would create such a thing that is so delightful to my senses, and what a gift it is that he would give me such a thing. It is a mere glimpse of what it is to have a relationship with him. The sweetness that you experience in those moments. But we can even remember on days that are cold like today and you roll out of bed in your aching body where everything feels just stiff and you just want to stay in bed, right? Even in those times, we can remember that this season is about God taking on a body and taking on the limitations of a body and taking on the achiness and stiff back of a human body. God, who has every right to experience only goodness and only pleasure, subjected himself to the limits and the aches of a human body so that he could suffer along with us, but also suffer for us. And I think that is worth our attention. That is worth making space and room for our attention and our adoration as we go throughout our day. So as you go throughout your day experiencing your aches and your pains, we can experience them as aches and pains, and we can complain about them, and we can long for a new world and a new body, but we could also take those times to remember that, Lord, you know what this is like. And I thank you that you had compassion on me and my frailty. And as we experience the good things, the hot chocolate, the warm slippers, and all that, and the rhythms throughout our day, let's slow down to enjoy those for the gifts that they are, but to enjoy the Creator that gave them to us. I think that is a way of making room for him, of making room and not being distracted by those things, but using those things as instruments of our worship. I shared this illustration last year. Maybe some of you who are new will get something out of it, or maybe it's just worth remembering. You'll know where I'm going with it as I bring it out. Let's see. There we go. Story of two wood choppers in the woods. We will, we'll name, the two wood choppers. One of them's kind of a veteran wood chopper. He's been around for a bit. And the other one's young. He's eager. He's eager to prove himself. He has lots of energy. We'll call the veteran wood chopper, we'll call him Roger. We'll redeem Roger. We've used Roger as an illustration before. We'll use Roger. And we'll use the younger one, we'll call him Clay. We'll call the young one will be Clay, who's Roger's son-in-law, by the way. So Roger and Clay. And so Clay, eager to prove himself, they're out, chopping wood one day, and Clay says, he's eager to prove himself. He says, look, I'm feeling good today. I think that I can chop more wood than you can today, Roger. I think that at the end of the day, we'll look at our piles, and it'll be obvious that I've stacked more wood than you today after cutting it and all that. And he says, you know what? Let's put a friendly little wager on it. Whoever stacks more wood, or the loser buys the winner a porterhouse steak. We'll go into town tonight, and we'll get a porterhouse steak. And so they go for it. And so Clay goes for it, right? I'm going to be real careful here. I'm not going to let this thing fly. So don't judge my form. We're just kind of going through motions. This isn't going to cut anything, right? But Clay's going, he's just chopping. And Roger's in the distance. Like he can kind of like hear his axe in the distance. But he's chopping at it. But suddenly Clay doesn't hear Roger's axe anymore. Like it stops. And he's like, we've only been at this for like a half hour. Is he taking a break already? He's like, man, if he's going to be taking breaks, I'm certainly, I'm going to win this because I'm not going to stop. A little while later, the same thing. He no longer hears Roger's axe anymore. And he's like, is he taking another break? I mean, he's already behind from that first break. Like I can already taste that porterhouse steak. I'm telling you what, because I'm keeping them going. I'm chopping. I don't know when to stop. I can do this all day. And this goes on throughout the day. So at the end of the day, they get together, they compare their wood piles. And wouldn't you know it, Roger is the one who stacked more wood that day. And Clay is beside himself thinking, how is this possible? Because this whole time I was working, I never stopped working, and you were taking all these breaks. And Roger said, well, when I was taking all those breaks, I was sharpening my axe. So what's happening to Clay's axe as he keeps working and working and working? It's getting duller. So the more he goes, the less effective his work actually is. There's a reason that God gave us Sabbath. And so I would invite you through this season to take little mini Sabbaths, ways of connecting with God through this season and in the midst of your busyness, right? Because really, we can tell ourselves, if only I had more time, right? If there were 25 or 26 hours in a day, if only I had more time. But honestly, it's not that you need more time, because if there were 25, 26 hours, you would just fill those up with 2, right? The issue is not having more time. The issue is it's doing what's important. Yeah. So as the band comes, I want us to reflect on that. I want us to reflect on the fact that Jesus never really seemed stressed out, never really seemed to be in a hurry. People were always interrupting him, but he always made time for people because he was never in a hurry. Is your to-do list more important than Jesus? Jesus' to-do list? Jesus was busy, but he was never in a hurry, never stressed out, never hypersensitive. Why? Because he kept a sharp axe. He had a knack for remaining in the Father's presence. So as we go through the season and then beyond that, may the season launch us into a regular rhythm of slowing down and seeing and noticing God's gifts all around us. Even the gift of an aching body, which reminds us that he himself became human and that he came to redeem all things. So the band's going to play. If you guys want to play Joy to the World and then the other one. All right, you make the call then. That's right. Yeah, you make room. That's right. I'm glad that I'm the guy who has the axe in my hand, but that Todd trusts me altogether. I appreciate that, man. That means a lot to me. This has been quite a service. Thank you. So they're going to play Make Room, and I do hope that as you reflect on what we've talked about today, you'll look at your life and the rhythms of what it's like and ask yourselves, how can I make room? How can I make room? How can I see you in all things, Lord? And how can I keep a sharp axe? So let's pray. Our Father, you are greater than all of our distractions. Lord, be the brightest light that shines this season. Be the thing that catches our eye. Help us, God, in our frazzled, just chaotic world, full of 24-hour news cycles and social media, buzzing phones and everything that demands our attention. God, help us to discover rhythms where we connect with you, where you quiet our hearts, and we learn to love you for who you are. Let every heart prepare him room. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. Every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to, and I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. Every burden, every doubt. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. Every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want Shake the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here's where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender.
We're going to end by singing Joy to the World, but before that, a few announcements. Remember, today is the deadline to register for 90 Days of Focus. Next Saturday on December 7th, we're going to hear from our friend Tom Barlow to talk about setting specific goals to live a more intentional 2025. So again, today is the last day to register for that online or through the app. And if you would like to give, just to support and help us to finish the year strong in terms of our budget, you can do that online through the app, through texting, and the black boxes in the back. And lastly, I just want to say, with what happened before, I'm so grateful for what I heard among you. I heard a lot of people praying. And I'm just really grateful for that. So, but as we go, leave today, we'll sing with joy in our hearts, right? All right, joy of the world.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. We will sing, sing, sing. Joy to the world. We will sing, sing, sing. righteousness.